Hey guys, what's up? What's up? Welcome back to the Sweet Fire Soul Revival YouTube channel. If we have never met before, my name is Joe, and if we have, welcome back. So, today I want to talk to you about something kind of important, but I want to talk a little bit about why before I do this, and that kind of ties into what we're about to talk about. So, I think it's really important that we have effective internal dialogue, right? And the reason that I feel like that is important is because if we don't question ourselves about why we want something, why we're doing what we're doing, what it is that we're trying to accomplish, etc., what are we then doing? We're essentially just repeating the same actions, the same cycles, doing the same things, taking the same actions, thinking the same thoughts, saying the same things over and over and over again, right? It's not until we bring our awareness to what we're doing or what we're saying, etc., that we realize, oh, that's the deal, right? So when we bring our awareness to that, then we can really understand ourselves a little bit better. Then we can really get behind what it is we want or where we're going or what we're doing or whatever it is, right? So I have a lot of people come to me and ask me, like, how can shadow work help me create my dream relationship or create a better relationship with myself, right? And the thing is, really, it's just about having that dialogue within yourself, with yourself, right? Um, and when we do that, we're more able to get to the bottom of what it is that's going on within us rather than just kind of, thinking about it or asking questions like, why me, right? And I know, and I've seen this a lot in the past, that like, why as a question, right? Why is not something that coaches will often ask. And I know that part of that is because it does sometimes sort of like impact the client if they're in a victim mentality, or we kind of get behind this like I said, well, this like whole why me attitude, right? Or if it's in the negative, then it's something that people often will just kind of dwell in those negative feelings, again, kind of further perpetuating this whole victim mentality or whatever, right? So I think, though, that we need to really, and not just in this kind of like philosophical or hypothetical, like why, we really need to ask ourselves why, right? We need to understand, well, why am I doing this? What am I doing this for, right? Like, if I'm taking this action, what is it accomplishing? What am I achieving by doing things this way? What am I achieving by thinking in this way, by saying things in this way, by doing, feeling, whatever in this way? Like, why are these the things that I am doing? Why are these the things I'm thinking or saying or feeling or wanting, right? And so when we can really be crystal clear about that, when we can say, okay, well, the reason why is, then we're really backing it, right? Then we're behind it. Then we can turn around and say, oh, okay, this is it. Now that I have the clarity around it, right? Because like when we have this effective internal dialogue, it's essentially providing us with the clarity that we need in order to continue on our path or change direction or, right, think of a new strategy. So I'm gonna give you a couple of real life examples. So sometimes we kind of bypass having a internal dialogue, asking ourselves these really important questions, right? We bypass this because it's not something that we normally do, right? And even when we have conversations with like friends, loved ones, family, whatever, we're not always open, or we're not always honest, or we're not always really digging into the deep stuff, right? So I always say start with you first. So here's kind of my main massive example, right? So years and years ago, I was dating someone, and when things got serious, I was very upfront about the fact that, like, I was not interested in having kids, and so, like, if that was something that was going to be a deal breaker for them, you know, maybe we shouldn't continue. And so he was kind of like, oh, yeah, no, like, don't worry about it. Like, I do want kids, but whatever, like, way down the line, right? So over time, I realized what he would do was he would say things or do things or behave in certain ways that were like it was like he was trying to get me to change my mind, right? And I was like, no. But I have a reason why that is not something that I want. It's not something that I'm interested in. And so I, you know, was always really clear about that fact. And throughout the duration of our relationship, you know, the whole kids, marriage, blah, blah, came up. And I was like, you know, like, firstly, like, marriage isn't something that I'm, like, necessarily, like, interested or focused in on right now. So I'm not saying no, but I'm not saying yes. It's just, like, not a top priority. But, like, no, flat out, never, ever, ever is kids going to be a thing that I put on the table as an option. Like, no. And so, you know, was kind of like a point of contention, right? And so when it came down to it, like I said, over the course of time, I was always asking him, like, if you've never asked yourself this, or you've never thought about it in this way, like, maybe it would be beneficial for you to get clear about why it is that you feel like kids are something that you want. And so his thing was always like, well, why do I have to have a reason? And I'm like, well, you know? And I was like, okay, well, cool. I mean, it's not something we're going to do anyway, so do whatever you want. But finally, one of the last times we had a conversation was about that was he finally said, well, because it's what my parents did. And I was like, okay, cool, I get that. I understand. But you don't like kids, right? You don't like spending time with your nieces and nephews, and you don't go out of your way to do so. And when we're at family gatherings, you tend to avoid them. So I just think that maybe you should kind of evaluate this, right? Because, like, we can leave a family function, but, you know, like, if you decide that kids are a thing, you can, I guess, just leave them or whatever, but, like, it's something to think about, right? And, you know, on top of that, he was just like, well, that's what my parents did, and I was like, you do nothing but complain about your parents and how shitty their relationship is and how terrible it was growing up and, like, how abusive your dad was. So why is that something that you want to emulate, you know? And, like, it's not about justifying these answers to me, but, like, you need to be clear about why this is what you want, right? Like, is it just to kind of emulate your parents' relationship? Like, is it that you want to keep these cycles going? Like, really, I mean, think about it. And, you know, shortly thereafter, we were not together. But it was something that he had never clearly ever thought about in a very serious and sincere type of way, right? And so I think that when we're making those choices, right, or when we're in this place where, like, well, let me back up. So I noticed this in friends and clients, in myself way back when, where we say things like, well, when I have a relationship, I'll be happy. When I get married, I'll be happy. When I have kids, I'll be happy. When I lose the weight, I'll be happy. When I have this kind of job, I'll be happy. When I'm making X amount of dollars a year or a month or whatever, then I'll be happy. But why are you waiting, right? Why is your happiness contingent upon this? why are you not participating in happiness right now? Right? And so when we ask ourselves those questions, instead of just kind of like taking these kind of like ideas that we have around happiness, and when we get to this point, then we'll have reached happiness. Why do we not question those things, right? We just think like happiness is kind of like a destination along the path, but the truth is that you can have and experience these feelings at any given moment in time, right? Happiness is not a destination, and it's something that you can partake in anytime you want to. But we have to recognize, okay, what do these big things that we believe that we want, that we believe are going to make us happy, why do we want them, right? And I know for some people, just wanting it is enough, and that's totally fine. Like, whatever justifies it to you, for you, is really all that matters. You do not need to justify your shit to anybody else. But we do need to have those conversations with ourselves, right? That is imperative, because when we neglect doing that, we continue to put off being happy, and then we make all these choices that don't get us any closer to this idea of happiness. And so we're never really creating a relationship with ourselves that we want. We're never really creating or cultivating a relationship with someone else, other people, whether that's romantic or not, with other people. We're never really in this place of creating the reality that we desire, because we're making all these choices based on the fact that happiness is a destination that we're arriving to in the future. You can be creating all of that shit right now, right? But it's a matter of asking ourselves, why am I doing this? What am I accomplishing? What is it that I actually fucking want, and why do I want it, right? Because when we can get behind the what and the why, that's the battle. The how doesn't even fucking matter, right? Like, leave the how up to God, the universe, whatever. I mean, don't just kind of like throw caution into the wind and believe that if you sit around doing nothing, that it's just going to fall into your lap. Obviously, we have to take the action towards what we want, but when we understand what exactly it is we want and why we want it, when we're clear about those things, then we can really, in a more concentrated effort, right, move towards it, instead of believing that it lies somewhere in the future and that we're just doing all of these things, making random choices or making decisions that we're unaware of, we're unconscious of, because we have all this subconscious programming going on in the background, and we're actually getting further and further from what it is we want, where we're trying to go, what we're trying to accomplish. When we have the internal dialogue of, wait a minute, what I'm doing right now, is that getting me closer to what I want, or is it taking me farther away? And then adjusting course from there, right? When we ask ourselves these questions, when we're honest with ourselves about this stuff, then we can take those actions, right? Those measurable actions that are actually moving us closer to what it is that we want. And because the relationship is not what's going to make you happy. Losing the weight is not what's going to make you happy. Like, having the money is not what's going to make you happy. I mean, I'm not saying those things are not great. Of course they are, but like, that's not where the happiness lives, though, right? It lives right here, right now. And the idea that you have to deny yourself that until you reach this goal is kind of ludicrous, right? Like, why is that what you believe? And so when we are able to question our motives or our actions or our thought process or our feelings, then we're more able to really get down into, okay, so in this example that I gave you, like, Why do I want to perpetuate these cycles? Why do I think this is what's going to make me happy? Why do I believe that even though I don't really like kids or want them, that that's going to be the solution, right? And like I said, I see this all the time in clients and friends where they like get married and they have kids, and the reason that they do this isn't necessarily because that's what they actually want or even what they want with who they're with, but they believe that doing these things is going to solve their problems, is going to suddenly make them happy, that the act of getting married, the act of having kids is going to make them happy. It's going to fix the issues. No, none of that shit ever fixes anything. Just like losing weight. I mean, I guess unless you have like health issues, seriously, then you're helping yourself in that way by being healthy. But really, that's not what's fixing the problem, right? Like, jumping from relationship to relationship isn't what's making you happy. It's not fixing what you feel like is broken inside of you, right? And so we are so very, very, very conditioned and taught to look outside of ourselves for these answers, to say, well, that's going to fix the problem. And so when I have that, then this like emptiness or this brokenness or whatever it is that I feel like is going on within me is going to be fixed because now I have this thing. Nope, never gonna happen. And the reason for that is because it doesn't start out here. It doesn't start in the physical world. It starts on your internal playing field. It starts with what you're already feeling. If you already feel broken or empty or whatever it is that you're feeling, nothing outside of you is going to fix that, because you are not dealing with what's going on in here. And so forevermore, you will, the more that you resist it, the more that you ignore it, the more you're going to see evidence of it outside of you. And vice versa. If you're doing the internal work and you're taking strides in that way, then of course, what you're going to see on the outside of you is going to be things that really are getting better. Like, I can see what I was missing before. I can see how that, mindset, or how because I was ignoring this trauma or this pain, I wasn't getting to the bottom of, I was creating more of it. Like, I see that now, and I see now that I can take different action, make different choices, right? Because it is all a fucking choice, and we can choose to either do the work or we can choose to ignore the work, right? And both choices are correct. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is no right, there is no wrong. Like, it's just about what you choose. So why not choose? If this is something that you really want to do, if you really want to cultivate a relationship with yourself, if you really want to call in relationships that you are worthy of, that you desire, that you want, that are supportive, you have to start here. It does not start outside of you. It starts within you, because you don't attract what you want. You attract what you are, because your internal reality is always the reality. Like, that's why we're all experiencing something different at any given moment in time, right? So reality is not really out here in the outside world. Reality is really taking place inside of you. And so when you recognize that you have the power to change what's going on, and that when you change what's going on inside of you, and that's going to reflect outside of you, you are empowered. Then you can make choices which are going to support what it is that you do want versus what it is that you don't want, right? So ask yourself the question. Ask yourself, where am I going? And what am I doing that's getting me there? What am I doing that I can really cut out? what are these patterns that I'm perpetuating? What are these cycles that I continue to go through that I am tired of going through, right? We have to lessen extract, because when we can extract and implement what it is we have learned, right? Because you don't really know something. It's easy to be like, oh, well, I know that this is what I learned. I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But if you're not taking action on that, you're not taking action on what it is that you know, then you don't really know, because you don't know until you do. So when we can actually like walk our talk, then we're more able to see, oh shit, like that changed so easily, all because I chose something different. All because I recognize that even though on an intellectual level I can see that this is the lesson, but I wasn't taking the action towards the lesson, towards what I knew to make a different choice. That's what was holding me back. That's what was stopping me, was I was taking the same actions over and over and over again. But now that I see, and now I've made a different choice, the change was easy. The change was instant, because now I'm doing differently, right? So ask yourself the tough questions. Get down into those wants, those needs that you have, and get to know them. Get to know you, right? Because how can you create a reality that you desire if you don't even know what you want and why you want it? Is it really your desire, or is it something that someone told you that you wanted or had to be or had to have, right? Because we are carrying, like in my example, we're carrying around a lot of things that we learned from our childhood that we believe is what we want, that we believe is the desired outcome. And you might come to find that that's not what you want at all, that you're like, oh no, I didn't really want that at all. Like, I wanted the exact opposite, or something in this realm over here, but I didn't know that because I never actually stopped to ask myself, why do I want this, and what is it that I actually want, right? So ask yourself the questions and really dig deep. If you're like, well, I want $1 million, great. But why do you want it? What is $1 million going to get you? Right? Is it like what you're going to do with $1 million? Is it how you're going to feel if you had $1 million? So really get behind the what of it, right? Not just like what you want, but why you want it, right? Because then you can get into the feeling of it. Does it feel good? Yes, it does, or no, it doesn't, right? So then you get to play with, okay, well, that doesn't feel great. So now I'm going to like tweak it a little bit. And when I do this, then I can really get behind it. Then it feels really aligned. Then I get excited about it, right? So ask yourself the question, do the internal work, and then it will show up in the physical reality, right? All right, guys, if you have any questions, drop them below. You can send me an email or reach out to me on social media. I will see you next week. I love you. Bye.